Welcome to Spirit Outspoken, where we dive deep into the realms of spirituality, healing, and the beautiful chaos we call life.
From ancient traditions to modern practices, we are going to explore it all. Whether you're a newbie or a seasoned seeker, you're guaranteed to find something that inspires, challenges, and intrigues you here.
So grab your favorite beverage, find a cozy spot to curl up, and join us for Spirit Outspoken. Hello and welcome to another episode of Spirit Outspoken. Today, Jasa and I are really excited because we're talking about something that's very near and dear to our heart, and that is emotional vulnerability.
Yes.
So I don't think you start a podcast without being ready to be a little bit emotionally vulnerable. And
Yes.
You and I certainly were no strangers to this because, I mean, my God, we started in the very first episode, we were sharing like our deepest, darkest pain and struggles.
Yes.
So clearly we are very comfortable with this concept and this topic. But I think it is important if we're talking about emotions to address just how powerful vulnerability can be.
Yes.
And I think Brene Brown has been an incredible resource in the past number of years at bringing that to light, giving people freedom to speak their truth openly and honestly, and that there is power and support and community and all these wonderful things that start to happen when we're willing, bold enough and brave enough to actually step into that and be our authentic selves and share that with others. So we're going to just dive into it today and discuss all those various aspects, what it means to us, how it's impacted us, and all those wonderful things. You found a really great quote from Brene herself.
Yes. I love this quote. So it's vulnerability is not weakness. It's our greatest measure of courage.
I love that.
I know. That's so simple, but it says it all. Being yourself does take so much courage, doesn't it?
It does.
I mean, because there's fear of being liked. There's fear of not being accepted. Even as adults, that runs deep.
Yeah.
That fear, right? Of if I'm myself and I'm not accepted, what does that mean?
And the different environments that we step into where we might feel as though we need to wear a certain face or a certain mask, whether that's our family of origin, whether that's our corporate environment, whether that's our friend circle or social circle or whatever. There's all these different arenas that we enter into.
Yes.
And sometimes along with that, there can be expectations or a feeling that in order to fit in, we need to be a certain way, think a certain way, do certain things. And it does take bravery and great courage to just be who you are.
Yes.
And I will say, as your friend, you are someone who has such an authentic, you're just so authentically you.
Oh,
Regardless
that's nice.
of who you are with or where you are. And that is something that I have always admired about you and been drawn to.
That's really nice.
You know, with you.
I appreciate you saying that.
And you do. I see how, I just know how I feel when I'm with you. And I know that I feel safe to be my whole self, good, bad, otherwise.
Totally.
And I think you do such a good job of creating that environment for others.
Great.
Yeah. Well, you
That
know,
is so...
give credit where credit is due.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
I really do appreciate you saying that. I think, you know, it's funny. I think it's true in a sense. And if you understood some of the emotions behind it, I think it's interesting too, right? I do feel like I'm unapologetically myself, for sure. Because I found that it's just the effort to hide who I am is too great.
Yes.
I've never really been able to hide who I am. But I would say that doesn't come without insecurities. Even if I'm unapologetically myself, if I walk away and I don't feel like I'm fully accepted, that's really hard for me.
Yeah.
And I've struggled with that even as an adult. I would say it's really sort of changed in the last couple of years. I remember praying and asking God, I was like, I don't feel like I've found a group where I'm really accepted.
Yeah.
Like I'm really accepted and I just am loved for who I am. I'm loved for my flaws. You know, like the ridiculous things I say are not received with eye rolls, but people can see the humor in the things that I see humor in. And I would say God answered that prayer. It's been really cool to see the people that have come into my life, and you're certainly one of those. And to feel like you can be vulnerable and you can be yourself and think exactly what you're thinking without fear of judgment.
Yeah.
That is freedom in relationships.
Absolutely.
And I think that's really, and that's the courage part.
Mm-hmm.
If we can put ourselves out there and face the fear of rejection or face the fear of not being accepted, that opens the way to true acceptance. Because here's the thing, not everybody is going to like what you have to say.
Yeah.
And not everybody's going to like exactly who you are. So you may go through a period where, man, I don't know who my people are.
Yeah.
Right? But you will find your people, and those people will love you for exactly who you are. And I think it's worth going through that experience.
It brings relationships to such a deeper level.
Yes.
Right? When there's no pretenses or expectations, or like you said, to just be who you are, good, bad, otherwise.
Yes.
And be able to share that with another person and still have them show up and love you and appreciate you and not think less of you. That's amazing.
That's
and
amazing.
incredible.
I know. And I think a lot of this is formed on intangible things of relationships, right? We joke around about the vibe check. Does the vibe check out when you meet a new friend, or if you're in a group? Do you feel safe? Do you feel energetically comfortable?
I am all for vulnerability, but you also need to be aware, I think, of who you are most vulnerable with. There are certain people that I just don't allow complete access to my emotions because I just don't feel the safety there, right?
Yes.
And so
Absolutely.
I think having discernment, and you can still be authentic without sharing deep, dark secrets. And I think that's what we want to get at too, is like authenticity doesn't always mean
sharing everything.
That's
such a good point.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you said that, because I feel the same way. I don't necessarily share the deep, gnarly things that are going on in my life with everybody.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like, hey, this is really personal and this is a really big challenge for me. Not a lot of people get access to that.
Yes.
So having discernment in who you share things with doesn't mean that you have to hold back your authenticity or hold your essence back, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's a good distinction.
Yes. So vulnerability is a strength. It creates connection and it builds authenticity. I would say too, you reference the podcast in terms of vulnerability in sharing our stories, sharing my son's diagnosis, you sharing your very unique experience with loss and grief. And I think for both of us, that has contributed so much for our own healing.
Yes.
And originally, I realized that sharing on the Caring Bridge, where I update if there's any major changes, some things are a little bit more stressful than others. Some things I'm happy to report really exciting, good news. That has been a level of vulnerability, but I have found it incredibly therapeutic. And it's been part of my own healing journey. But to bring that to a podcast, which is a much different public venue than a Caring Bridge, that's just basically our closest friends and family and friends of friends that have followed along the journey, that has required something a little bit different. But I have found that so healing. Yes. Because I'm seeing how others are connecting with our story.
Yes. And I will readily admit, as we are talking about being vulnerable here, when we were about to hit record on this, and I was realizing like anyone in the world is now going to be able to log on and hear very personal details about my life. And especially when we're talking about something as personal as spirituality, and as potentially volatile as spirituality, right? And I had moments of, do I want to share this? Like, what will certain people think if they know that? Or I had a little bit of that. But when you get back to that idea of it healing you, sharing it and just putting it out there, I've been amazed at how much it's helped already with my confidence in terms of just being who I am.
Yes.
And being okay with the fact that, you know what, if you don't agree with me, that's okay.
Yes.
And I'm finally okay with you not being okay with it.
I'm so glad that you said that.
Yeah.
Because I think that's another layer of vulnerability that we've had to face as well, is like, will we be judged for some of our beliefs? Will we be judged for being too outspoken? Will we be judged for talking about new cutting edge, maybe considered taboo topics to mainstream Christianity, which is, and we're both Christian. We're Christian, you guys.
Yeah.
It's not like we've all of a sudden defected. But that was a big thing for me too. It was like, okay, we are knowingly putting stuff out there that could be viewed as controversial, or we could be judged for it.
Oh, yeah.
Based on our beliefs. And that really...
I mean, I was terrified. I remember saying to Jason in a text, I was like, well, I'm just bracing myself like that I'm going to be told that I'm going to hell at some point. And I say that jokingly, but that's upsetting.
That is upsetting.
Like,
and
that's, it does make you go, am I going to be able to handle that? Am I going to be okay if someone says that to me? And I had to be willing to get over that fear. And I think what helped me was just, if I'm thinking these things, if I'm questioning these things, other people are too. And I have found that as I've continued to evolve and grow in my spiritual journey, that this has brought me such immense peace and joy and growth that I have never experienced before.
Yes.
And if I can be a part of helping someone else find that, then it's worth it.
It's all worth it.
Yes.
And like by being vulnerable and saying, yes, I'm investigating other theories of spirituality. Yes, that's what I'm doing. You're absolutely right. It makes it okay for other people to feel vulnerable enough to be authentically who they are.
Yeah.
I think the biggest travesty that I've seen is where people don't connect anymore. They don't feel connected to spirituality because one element of their religious upbringing doesn't make sense to them. So they throw the baby out with the bathwater. They throw baby Jesus out with the bathwater.
Don't throw him out.
Don't throw him out. No.
Keep Jesus in the tub.
But like,
it's true though.
It's true.
It's true. And I think too, like we're a different generation.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people in the same boat as we find ourselves in. Who were raised in a religion and a faith that is still meaningful to them.
Yes.
But maybe some of the rhetoric or some of the dogma that is out there is not resonating with us. And we just feel like there has to be a better way.
Yes.
And I don't want to be a part of that.
Right.
I mean, honestly, I don't want to be a part of anything that is telling other people they're going to go burn in hell, or they're pointing out other people's sins, or any type of hypocrisy like that. I have no time for that.
I know.
And I don't want to be associated with it. And I think a lot of people in our generation don't. And we see that the system is flawed. And we're asking questions because we are demanding a more authentic relationship with God than just living by laws and structures and things that have been told to us. We want to experience it. I almost feel as though it's a time of mysticism. And that sounds evil. Like Christian mystics have been around for saints in the Catholic Church are Christian mystics. It's having an experiential knowledge of God. And I feel as though our generation is craving that.
You just dropped that fucking mic, Rach. Yes.
I don't know.
No, that's so. I felt like you just wound up and then you just launched, and I love it. But that's so true. And being vulnerable allows connection with other people. But I think the other benefit is you learn more about yourself, because if you say the things that you are scared to say out loud, you get an indicator of how it makes you feel, right? Like you get that kind of gut check. Like, all right, I have these thoughts in the back of my mind, and I'm scared to say them out loud because of fear of judgment. And then you speak them, and one of two things can happen. You could say, I don't know if that actually connects with my inner self. Or you speak them and you say, that felt like I was speaking my truth. That can tell you if you're on the right path or not for you as an individual.
Yeah.
And I think that that is the beauty of blurring the lines a little bit. Like, and we're even seeing now, I mean, look at all the different churches within Christianity, right? Like there went through a phase where there was like 15 different types of Christianity.
Yeah.
There was all of these very specific divisive things and different things within the church. And that gave, in some ways, power to own individuals to say, like, okay, I don't like that flavor of Christianity. I like this other one.
Yeah.
What's the harm in saying, like, okay, I want to incorporate other aspects of spirituality that aren't just Christianity, right? Like, what's the difference? We all have the same God.
Yeah. And that might also enhance. And that's been my experience, that some of these, if you want to call them more mainstream or new age spirituality, or new age practices, if you want to call them that, really what I'm finding as I learn more about them is, one, so many of them are steeped in science. And I've always been a big believer that science is only helpful, that science only proves that there is a creator and something larger than ourselves.
It reaffirms your faith.
Yeah. And so I see those two going together. And I have found similarly that a lot of these practices only help me experience Christ in a more tangible way.
Yes.
You know, it's like I
totally
take it, I put it through my Christian filter, and I'm allowed to experience my Christianity in a new and different way that feels even more real and even more tangible.
Yes.
And that's what I love.
I love that too. This reminds me of something. I had a conversation with my mom. I was young. I think I was like 12 or 13. And I don't remember what we were talking about, but I just remember saying this statement. It was one of those things where it's like you're having this thought and you feel vulnerable and courageous enough to say it. And then you say, wow, that's my truth. I remember saying to her, I don't believe in Jesus because the Bible tells me to. I believe in Jesus because of my own experience of him in my life. I am not.
Boom.
Yeah. I am not going to make my decisions based on somebody tell me if I don't, I'm going to go burn in hell. That if I don't do this, then this is going to happen. So you better do that or else there's devastating consequences. Or just telling me to do something because I should. Like, good luck telling me to do something. Like, you know me.
And to me, that is so against what he would want. I mean, the
No,
whole Bible is about Christ desiring a relationship with us.
Yes.
And an authentic relationship.
Yes.
You cannot have an authentic relationship built on fear.
Yeah.
In this life or the next.
Amen.
Right?
Amen.
I don't think that's how he wants it.
No.
So yet we keep throwing that out there.
It's not genuine. If you're doing something based on fear, you're not doing it.
And it's
you're
not
being
of
coerced.
God. It's not of God.
It's not of God. And it's like coerced is saying it's like you're literally being forced, but you're mentally being coerced into believing something.
Manipulation.
Yes,
Go
exactly.
back to our scale of consciousness. Where is that on the scale? Very low.
Yeah. Yeah. Good luck with that one. You know where else are I really seeing vulnerability be helpful is in conflict resolution. When I think about younger Jasa, I would take us, which honest to God, I'm like, who was that lunatic?
Oh my God, I know.
I'm shocked I made it out alive.
I don't even know who the 20-something Rachel was.
Oh my gosh, if we knew each other then, like, it'd been a problem.
I don't think we would have survived.
We'd be in jail right now.
It would have been fun though.
It would have been fun. I think about the way I handle conflict now as a 40-year-old versus late 20s, early 30s. And the goal for me was to win, was to be right. And I'm realizing now, if I have conflict with somebody, and I'm good at conflict, but I really dislike it. If something's off with somebody, I don't like to get into the nitty gritty with somebody. Like some people just enjoy arguing for the sake of arguing.
Yeah.
I really do not. But when I say I'm good at conflict now, I feel like instead of my goal being to win, my goal is to understand and to resolve.
Yes.
And the way in which I've gotten there is to take vulnerability to the table with me. And what that typically looks like is, hey, you said something and it really hurt me. When you said X, Y, and Z, that made me feel this way. Yeah. And I don't think I would have ever admitted
that you were hurt.
Nope.
Yeah.
Because I really associated that as a sign of weakness.
Yeah.
And I was going to force the conversation to show that they were an asshole and they were rude and how dare they say that. And that's a much different approach than saying, I was deeply hurt by that. And that, for me, for somebody that has overactive self-assuredness, can be overly confident in situations, because that's my armor.
Yep.
You know, to kind of put that down and to say that hurt me and that made me feel bad. And I had a emotional reaction that really upset me or, you know, unsettled me. And that I have found has been transformative to the conversations, because either somebody doesn't know that they've done something, or they're going through their own things that I don't understand, or something I said created a defensive response to them. So they responded in fear or anger or shame. And then we're just going back and forth and hurting each other, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's seeing each other. No one's like listening or hearing each other. And that just says, like, God, I just feel so much better about those conversations. And listen, even if somebody like doesn't see it, I feel really good about how I have handled it.
Yes.
I can make peace with that.
Yes. You at least know that you've extended. And when you were saying that, what I thought was so interesting, because you were saying for you having an overactive assertiveness when you were younger, I was the total opposite and avoided. But I needed to learn the same exact method that you did. So the result was the same of me saying, this happened and you hurt me.
Yes.
Whereas before, I would not feel comfortable letting other people know that they've even upset me or done, you know what I mean?
I would let people know.
I know.
Which is not healthy.
But and it's also not healthy to avoid. So there in the middle is that beautiful spot of vulnerability that, regardless of where you're starting from, is so important to get to.
That's such a good point.
Yeah.
That was well said, Rach. Kudos. Okay. Think about sisterhood. Okay. Everybody, if you're lucky enough to go on girls' trips, or you're lucky enough to have a circle around you of amazing women, and it doesn't need to be a big circle. It could even be one.
Yeah.
Think about the connection when you share stories, when you share the things that nobody knows. Yeah. And like, how many times, if you're on a really good girls trip, you're like, this stays in the nest. Like our husband. It's funny. I always have a disclaimer. I'm like, well, can my husband Charlie know this, or is this like really in the nest?
Yeah, because there's like the inner nest.
Yes.
And then there's the extended nest.
It's the fringe.
The fringe.
The husbands are on the fringe. Yeah. And like a lot of times, like we're good friends with, you know, with each other's husbands, which is great. And like half the time I'm like, oh no, they could know that. But it's like, you know, sometimes if you're really being vulnerable, you're saying things out loud that nobody knows.
Yeah.
And they're the things that are deep in there that cause immense shame. And shame creates pain. Pain creates fractured relationships, right? Poor communication, all of the different things. So it's just such a beautiful tool as well to just connect you.
Yes. And to free yourself, because shame in the dark just grows and grows and grows. And there is something so beautiful about being able to just say it to someone else, a trusted source. And it's like, it can't live in the light.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That shame cannot live when it's exposed.
Yes.
And it's so freeing and healing to be able to just admit honestly to a trusted source, a source of shame or guilt or frustration or sadness that you've been lugging around for so long.
It's so true. And I think having a village or a squad where you can be like, oh my gosh, you guys, I am so mortified about how I just reacted to this situation with my child. And having people be like, oh my gosh, me too. I've done that too. Being able to just be human and not be perfect.
Yeah.
And I think for both of us we're recovering perfectionists, I would say that too. Like the perfectionism thing, podcast is a way to pull at that perfectionist thread where I'm like, oh, I should have said that differently. And I was like, oh, that's got to go right out the freaking window, right? Like, I'm not going to bring my judgment, my self-judgment into this. We don't need to be perfect.
Right.
And this has like been something where, like we're creating something where people may judge, not just our thoughts and our beliefs and our questions and the things that we're investigating, but literally us. right?
Yeah. As people,
as women. But yeah, just being able to be yourself as a human and being seen as a mother is an incredible way of gaining strength. And like on the flip side of that is confidence, right? Like I'm now like, I don't really care how I look on camera.
Yeah.
I don't really care if I stumble over my words or I said something that is like silly or stupid. I think it's funny and I'm going to laugh at myself and you're going to laugh at yourself. And there's so much beauty and freedom in that.
Yeah.
And that's been really liberating.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah.
This whole thing has been, we started with the goal of only helping others. And it's becoming so clear to me how much this is helping me. Sharing my story, being vulnerable, putting myself out there, releasing some of those perfectionistic tendencies, helping to see myself in new ways, learning from you it's just over and over and over these amazing lessons that I am learning through this.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's really just been a true gift.
And that was because, you embraced vulnerability and so did I. We both have gained so much self-confidence and just being like, we are who we are.
Yeah.
And I like that. I like reaching that.
Really good.
It does. And I think your 40s are all about that too.
Yeah. And I just think it keeps getting better and better the older you get. I think too, as a mom, and I obviously with boys too, but especially as girls, I just want them to know who they are and be confident in who they are. I spent so much time worrying about what other people thought of me and trying to be something that I thought I should be, or beating myself up because I don't know, I didn't fit some stereotype or expectation. And it was such a waste of time.
I know. But we had to go through that, right?
Yeah, it's all learning and growing. Yeah.
The other side of it. I would say too, when other people are vulnerable with me, it makes me feel good.
Yes.
Because it makes me feel like they trust me.
Yeah.
And I'm a safe place. I remember it was really interesting. It was somebody that's way more senior than I am in a work situation. It was a pretty high pressured presentation, but not something that was completely outside of the realm of what we do on a regular basis. And afterwards, I went to this individual and I was like, you did a really nice job. And he looked at me and he goes, I was super nervous. I was really nervous. I'm glad that you thought I did a good job. And that, like his admission of nerves, his vulnerability of saying, because there is a point where I would be like, over my dead body, am I going to admit that I'm nervous? I will be so over prepared where you will think I'm doing this in my sleep. When that's the opposite. It's like I'm so terrified of somebody knowing how I really feel inside that you over pivot, where I'm like, oh my gosh, how much more simple would it be if we just said, yeah, I was really nervous, but it made me feel good. That person could share how they felt. I'm like, they trust me.
Yeah.
I'm somebody that they can open up to. And that feels good too.
It means a lot. Yeah.
And on the topic of men, just so you know, guys, emotional vulnerability is sexy. Okay.
Yes.
So if you're just beasting your way through life and you feel like nobody can know what you're thinking, don't do that.
Well, and it's interesting, when I was in my parenting class, there's really a big push now for parents of boys, especially in our culture, to help boys name and identify their feelings. Because looking at just some of the issues we have with mental health with young men, and they need to learn how to process emotions and feel their emotions
and identify
them. And that's part of the concern is with young men is we never teach them those coping skills and how to do that. And then they have no other way except aggression or kind of this male toxic
masculinity.
Yeah, toxic masculinity, toxic masculine environment that we've created. And we really need to help boys and men work through that.
I think so too.
I'm thankful every day that I have a husband who is so kind and open.
Yes.
And it is such a gift to myself and to my kids.
Yes.
And Charlie's the same way. I know.
He's the same way. Yeah, and for sure.
It's important in a relationship.
I know. It really is. And being emotionally vulnerable in front of your kids is also something that's really key.
I had to learn that.
Oh man, I'm still struggling with that, Rach.
I thought if I cried in front of my kids that I was damaging them. and
So I still feel that way.
And
I know it's wrong.
Ryan was the one who helped me. They need to see this modeled to them.
Yes.
That you're human.
Yes.
That you're not just super mom. Like you're a human being who has emotions and has bad days and has hard times.
Yes.
It's okay that they see that in you.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And it brings out empathy in our kids too.
Yeah.
So I actually...
That's so true.
Yes. So last night, I told you I was like at my wit's end. It was a really arduous bedtime.
Oh my gosh, those are the worst.
The worst. And I literally got to the point of like almost crying. I was like pleading and to my kids. And my second oldest was like, "Are you going to cry?" And I was like, "Maybe." And I, fast forward, there was a lot of yelling too. It wasn't all just, I was like weepy. I was also like, "Get to bed." And I was repairing with my two oldest kids. And I said, "Listen, I'm really sorry. I was having a little bit of a rough night. And I didn't mean to yell. And it's not your fault that I'm feeling emotional. This is me. You are not causing these emotions."
Yes. This is my emotions are my.
Yes.
Yeah.
And my oldest looked at me and he said, "I still think you're the best mommy on the planet."
Oh my God.
I know. And my second oldest, who you know very well, who like isn't a man of a lot of
comfort.
Exactly. He goes, "No matter what you do, I will always love you."
Oh.
And I realized in that moment, those are words I say to him.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what you do, I will always love you. That is never a question. So even if you do something that we have to talk about in terms of behavior and things that we need to course correct, that has zero reflection on how much I love you. And so when we're talking about modeling certain things, it gave them an opportunity to provide empathy to me based on what I've tried to model to them. And then my youngest, who's very cute, is very aware of emotions, will be like, "Is your frustrated all gone? Is it gone now? Are you happy? Or are you still frustrated?" And half the time I'm like, "Actually, I'm still pretty frustrated with you. If you really want to know. It's not quite gone yet." But to your point, I have 3 boys, and it's very important to me that they don't feel the need to toughen out emotions, that they do feel like they can communicate, because I have a husband that is such a great husband and is such a great father because he makes it safe for other people. I wish sometimes he would make it safer for himself.
Yeah.
To be vulnerable. I think
that is so true. Because I think in our household too, Ryan does an amazing job of allowing everyone to express themselves and their feelings and
fall apart,
sit with them and fall up while they're in their moment.
Yeah.
But I don't know if he always lets himself.
Yes.
That's such good insight.
Yeah. I think that even our most emotionally in tune men, they could still feel a resistance to really feel and to really share their deepest, darkest fears because they have to be the strong ones, right? But what we're seeing and what our BFF Brene says is that the real strength is in vulnerability, right? And not in the masks that we put on for everybody else.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. This was good.
This was a goodie.
This was good, heartfelt, vulnerable stuff. So we have decided that for the resource guide this week, we are going to come up with 3 different sets of conversation starters to help people kickstart vulnerable conversations. So we're going to have one for partners, so you and your spouse or girlfriend, boyfriend, one for friends, and one for family.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
We'll put it all up. You can download it, print it out, do whatever, and hopefully it'll spur some good conversations.
You know what I like about that, especially the family one? Vulnerability is going to take practice.
Yes.
It's going to take practice. It's not something that's going to just come naturally.
Yeah.
So having a guide in a way, especially the family one, starting with our kids when our kids are young, to help them exercise that muscle. And then it becomes more natural as adults.
Foster that within the walls of our home. Right? That we are a safe space where we can talk about hard things.
Awesome. Well, guys, if you enjoyed today's episode, please share this with your friends, your community. Rachel and I are so enthusiastic about what we're doing here on Spirit Outspoken. So help us spread the good word. Have a beautiful, blessed week, and we will catch you soon.
Thanks for joining us for today's episode. If you're ready to take your spirituality to the next level, be sure to check out our website, spiritoutspoken.com. There you can download free educational resources, read our latest blog posts, and join the Spirit Outspoken community.
And don't forget to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Spirit Outspoken to stay up to date on news, happenings, shenanigans, and all things Spirit Outspoken.